literally the largest vehicle the company has ever produced. Let's take a look at this aging 2015 Mazda CX-9 and see if it still has that zoom factor that makes it a Mazda. Now, back in 2007, when Mazda introduced the CX-9 and smaller CX-7, these were SUVs the company finally designed on their own. It had its own unique interior, its own unique Mazda design language, its own unique powertrains, really. In the past, Mazda always gave us an SUV, if you remember the Tribute or the B series truck, which was a Ford Ranger and a Ford Escape, and then they also had that Navajo, which was an Explorer. Now, the CX-9 is the largest vehicle the company has ever produced. Mazda, as you guys know, is a brand known for producing small, zoom, fun-to-drive cars, and the CX-9 was the first 7-passenger crossover SUV the company introduced, and it's actually based off of the old Ford CD3 platform. That's the same platform that underpins the previous generation Ford Edge, the Ford Flex. So, of course, this vehicle was built in an era where Mazda and Ford were still, I guess, married, so it does share some parts bins with Ford. The engine up front is a Ford sourced V6, the platform, again, the Ford Edge. However, I wasn't really as impressed with the previous generation Ford Edge. However, this CX-9 really feels a lot different. This thing is more than just a rebadged Ford. The front of the vehicle, of course, sports its own unique styling elements. Mazda has made updates to the car over the years. For 2013, it got a really big refresh. It got rid of that smiley front end that nobody really cared for, replaced it with the Kodo design language, that beautiful 5-point grille. These signature LED daytime running lights come standard on the Grand Touring tester that I've got here, along with the bi-xenon headlights. Now, looking at the side profile of the vehicle, this is a very long vehicle. However, you wouldn't really know it just from staring at it. It stretches about 200 inches long, which makes it about 5 to 10 inches longer than most of its competitors. A Honda Pilot, for example, is about 191 inches long. So this is a very large vehicle. My Grand Touring tester has these 20-inch wheels that come standard. They're beautiful looking. They fill out the wheel wells nicely. I like the fact that you can get 20s on this car. A lot of its competitors top out around like 18 inches, for example. Looking at the rear of the car, it kind of has some familiar design elements of an Acura MDX, both the previous and the current generation. So that's why I kind of view this thing as a poor man's MDX, you could say. I really like the design of the taillights. These darkened clusters were new for 2013. However, Mazda did remove the LED taillights that were on the previous generation, so I am sad to see that go away. In terms of the trim levels, this car comes in 3. You can choose between the Sport, Touring, and the Grand Touring. Of course, I've got the top of the line Grand Touring model. It gives you the 20-inch wheels, the HID headlights, power tailgate. My particular model also has the technology package that gives you a couple of other niceties like premium audio system, navigation, stuff like that. Overall, I really think the design of this car has aged well. It's still a very sleek, stylish looking crossover. I mean, this was Motor Trend's 2008 SUV of the year, and it shows it was well ahead of its time. However, 8 years is a long time in the market. Let's take a look at the interior and see if it's aged as gracefully as the exterior. Now, looking at the interior of the 2015 Mazda CX-9, I am sad to say that it is not aged as well as the exterior. Of course, when you initially open the door, you're greeted with a very inviting cabin. I really like my tester with these beige leather seats with the black interior, the red accents on the dash. That's part of the Grand Touring trim. Now, of course, stepping inside the car, it's a pretty easy step-in height that you associate with an SUV. Just kind of get in the car. You don't have to duck. It's the perfect step-in for me. Now, my tester comes standard with Mazda's intelligent key system with smart entry. Here's the company's current key fob. It's a very nice, slim design. Now, because this is an older design vehicle, it does not have push-button start. This is basically the same pacifier-like turnkey plastic thing that's in the current Miata. So basically, you don't even have to put your foot on the brakes. Just turn this like you're turning a key. And of course, the gauges, they have been updated for 2013 with the newer style gauges. And then what you're hearing is the only V6 engine in Mazda's lineup. This is a 3.7 liter double overhead cam V6. It's actually a very good V6. It sounds great. It's very smooth revving, if a little slow to rev, but it's a really great motor. It suits this car very nicely. Now, when you look at the rest of the interior, it's pretty inviting. I mean, from people who are just looking for a simple interior that's familiar, you're gonna like this. I mean, of course, the interior hasn't really changed much since 2007, and the material quality is also a little bit behind the times. The dashboard is all hard touch plastic, which I'm fine with because a lot of its competitors have a hard touch dash. However, a lot of the newer ones are moving to a more high quality finish, such as the Pathfinder, the Highlander, for example. Some of the panel gaps in here are pretty large, for example, right there. Although they are consistent, they're just a lot of newer cars, for example, have just gone with much tighter fitting panel gaps. Now, thankfully, when you look at the door panels, they are soft touch right here where your elbows are gonna rest, and then this is probably the softest padded leather I've ever felt for an armrest right here, more leather right here. I like the aluminum look door handle. The window is automatic up down for the driver and the passenger, so it's nice that Mazda included that. You also have 3-person memory seat. It's just down here as opposed to on the door. Now, looking at the center stack here, this is where I have my biggest issue. If you guys are noticing, this audio display here is blue, that little eyebrow display there is red, and then this is white. I mean, there was a time where this interior was all red. That's the reason why there's a mismatch. This is the older display, newer display, newer display. Of course, this is not the latest Mazda infotainment system. This is the previous one where the company is moving away from this 5.8-inch touchscreen. When you go to the nav button, it gives you a TomTom navigation system, which is okay to use. For a lot of people who don't really know how to use all these high-tech nav systems, this is really easy to use. Basically, anytime you want to enter an address, you just touch the screen right there, and it just says navigate to, view map. It's really big displays. It's pretty easy to use. It's just a little bit childish. I mean, you can go and buy this TomTom system in any electronics store for like under $200, and you know, Mazda charges it as part of a $2,500 technology package, which it's a little disappointing. The screen's a little bit on the small side. Just basically my few gripes with it. The audio system here, it's a Bose 10-speaker audio system. It's a very decent sounding Bose system for the price. Again, you have your traditional sources here: AM, FM, Sirius, Bluetooth streaming audio, Pandora, auxiliary, stuff like that. When you open this little console here, that's where you're going to find your USB and your aux port. There was a time where Mazda didn't even give you a USB, so it's nice to see that the company's finally included that. Now, when you put the vehicle in reverse, you do have a nice backup camera. The view itself, the image quality is a little grainy for my taste. It doesn't have trajectory when you turn the wheel. However, this Grand Touring model does have backup sensors and rear cross traffic alert. Now, looking at the transmission, this is a 6-speed ASIN design transmission. It's not a forward transmission at all, and it's not the newer Skyactiv transmission that the company's using in their newer powertrains. So it's a decent transmission. One of my problems with it is this gated shifter. It's definitely an older design language. A lot of manufacturers are moving away from this, or they're at least putting a leather boot on this. This just looks kind of cheap. They did update the shift knob here, but this kind of just twists off, so you can interchange that if you want. Looking at the steering wheel, it's basically the same steering wheel that you had off of the previous generation Mazda 3. A little bit thin on the bolsters, but the black plastic looks nice. The buttons here, they're a little bit on the small side. I kind of always confused. When I wasn't looking, I would always hit this, thinking it was changing the station, but it was really the volume. Looking at the instrument panel here, it's also a dated design element because you have only just this little tiny screen right there, where a lot of its competitors give you a nice color LCD in here that shows you more information. So again, you're going to notice a few elements in here that are older design language. For example, looking above you, there's only a regular sunroof here. A lot of its competitors have gone to the big panoramic sunroof. It sure could use it, as it does affect the headroom. I mean, overall, if you guys are okay with the older technology, the CX-9's interior will still impress you. It's still familiar. It's pretty simple to use, but those of you who are expecting more may want to check out its newer competition. Now, looking at the back seat of the CX-9, this is an area where a lot of families are definitely going to judge the car harshly. And I have to say, the Mazda CX-9 impresses here. It's got a pretty roomy back seat. The seat itself also actually slides forward and back. Just pull this little handle here. You can see it slides forward and back to give you a little bit more space in the third row. Now, stepping inside here, it's a kind of a high step in. This car could almost use running boards to get into the second row, for example. But shutting the door, you do have a nicely finished cabin back here. You have audio, or your climate controls here, separate rear climate control, dual map pockets, a nice armrest right here with some storage, cup holders. The seats themselves have a very high quality feeling leather. Lots of really good thigh support for me. I really like the seat. It's a very soft, comfortable seat. The material is also carried through. It's soft touch back here on the upper door panels, and then more of that soft leather on the armrest pads. Now, to access the third row row of the CX-9, which is a little bit on the smaller side, honestly, for me. Pull this little lever here, the seat will slide forward, and it'll give you somewhat of a smaller access. Some of its competitors, such as the Pilot, give you a little bit more space. But you can see this third row is really for children. I mean, getting back here is a little bit of a challenging ordeal for adults, but if you have to do it, stepping back here, it's not too bad. But honestly, if I pull the seat back, when the seat's like halfway up, the legroom is decent, but you can see here when it comes back, you really don't have much room. Now, overall, the feeling of narrowness is definitely back here. The Pilot has a much wider body, so that's why it can sit 3 across, where the CX-9 only can seat 2. The materials back here, they're all hard touch plastic, of course, but at least Mazda gives you these tiny little cup holders for some storage. Now, a power tailgate is included on my Grand Touring tester, but I do have some issues with it. For one, if you try to open the power tailgate when the vehicle's locked, it will not let you. A lot of manufacturers will let you open the tailgate, so you have to first unlock the doors and then push the button. And it's actually one of the slowest power tailgates I've ever seen. Honestly, there were times where I literally just didn't use it because I didn't feel like waiting for it to open. A little bit annoying if it's pouring rain outside and you're trying to get your stuff in here. But when the tailgate finally does open, you're looking at about 17.8 cubic feet of cargo space. Not bad. It looks a lot smaller than it is. The cargo area is well finished. For 2015, there's a recreational accessories package that gives you this little nice bumper guard, the roof rail crossbars on top. That's actually free when you get the technology package. It's about $500 if you don't get that tech package, but it rolls it in as part of that package. Now, when you fold this seat down, for example, you pull this right here, you pull this lever right here, and the seat will fold down. You're gonna get about 50 cubic feet of space, and then if you fold the second row down as well, you're looking at about just under 101 cubic feet of space. So the CX-9 is a very long vehicle, and it gives you a little bit more cargo capacity than some of its smaller competitors. Now, popping the hood, you're gonna find the only V6 engine in a Mazda currently. This is a 3.7 liter double overhead cam V6, 24 valve. It has variable valve timing, but it doesn't have direct injection, what a lot of modern V6s are going to. Now, this is a Ford source V6. The company gets the parts from Ford, they build it in Japan, they assemble it in Japan. It's basically the same 3.7 you're gonna find in a Ford Mustang, for example, or an F-150. Now, in the CX-9, it makes 273 horsepower and 270 pound-feet of torque, which is a little bit more than most of its competitors, so it was a powerful engine for its time. It's still a good engine for today. It's paired with a 6-speed automatic transmission built by Aisin, and you can get this car either front or Mazda's active torque split all-wheel drive system. Fuel economy is a little bit on the less impressive side. It's rated at 17 city, 24 highway. It'll go down to 1622 if you guys go for all-wheel drive. That's on regular gas, of course. This car has about a 20-gallon gas tank. Now, that's actually competitive with some of its competitors. However, when you look at some of the newer like luxury competition, for example, like an MDX will get up to 28 miles to the gallon. So Mazda does need to work on the fuel economy. The car weighs about 4,500 pounds. Let's get on the road and see how this V6 and 6-speed auto does, shall we? So I have to admit, with such an old platform, my expectations weren't very high when I took the wheel, or I first got behind the wheel of the 2015 CX-9. However, I remembered just how good this car was back in 08. I mean, it won Motor Trend's SUV of the year. So let's take a look and see how the CX-9 has aged over the last 8 years, shall we? Now, this is a pretty big vehicle. I mean, at over 200 inches long, it's a lot longer than most of its competitors. And the amazing thing about the CX-9 is when you get behind the wheel, that size really just shrinks. This car feels a lot smaller than its size would suggest. I mean, it actually just kind of drives like a tall Mazda 6, to be honest, and I really like the way that it drives. It's a very nice driving SUV for sure. Now with 273 horsepower on top, this V6 makes good power from its 3.7 liters. It moves around this 4,500 pound SUV with decent authority. I mean, the car's transmission actually is probably the one thing that kind of slows it down. I mean, back in 2008, this was a great transmission. It's smooth shifting. It basically just goes about its business when you leave it in drive. However, it's a little bit lazier compared to today's newer transmissions, especially if you look at like a dual clutch or the 8-speed autos that I've driven. This transmission does feel a little lethargic. The V6 V6 makes a very nice noise, and this car's refinement is still pretty good. It's still a very solid feeling SUV despite its age. I mean, going down the road, just driving the car normally, you really feel this car's solidity. You feel its weight as well. I mean, it's a relatively average curb weight for an SUV, but the car just glides down the road with some smoothness. Like, in fact, a lot of people have complained in the past that these 20-inch wheels produce somewhat of a stiff ride quality. I can see that, however, for me, for my taste, I think the car rides just fine. I really like the way the 20s look as well. It fills out the wheel wells, and this car just feels really secure. It doesn't, like, bumps around the crappy roads here in DC don't really upset it. The car just kind of glides down. You feel like you can just conquer anything on the road. I mean, it gives you that nice higher seating position that a lot of buyers who want an SUV demand, and the car just feels like it's a very safe driving, secure vehicle. Now, being a Mazda, Zoom Zoom is the company's tagline, and I have to say the CX-9, for being the biggest Mazda they've ever produced, lives up to that tagline. In fact, I was never really impressed with the CD3 platform and the Edge. The Edge, for example, which is a lot shorter than this car, feels massive, it feels heavy, the steering doesn't give you any feedback, but Mazda really knows how to tune a suspension and a chassis, for example. The steering is very light, however, it does give you decent feedback. It's a little on the numb side, but the precision is there. I mean, going down these curvy back roads, you wouldn't expect a big SUV, 7-passenger SUV, to be able to tackle this, but the CX-9 handles it very well. Road noise is a little bit on the higher side. Mazdas have always been known for having elevated road noise. It's okay with me, I can just deal with it, but it is a little bit quieter, for example, than the Honda Pilot. But I have to say, just taking corners in this thing, you know, it doesn't really feel tippy, but you do sense the fact that you're in a taller SUV, but really the steering, the way the chassis feels, it makes you want to go a little bit faster. It makes you want to challenge the car and see what it can really do. Now, acceleration isn't what you'd say brute force, but the vehicle will get out of its own way quite decently. Now, at full throttle, I would expect this car to get to 60 in maybe a tick under 8 seconds. It does feel a little bit sluggish initially, as the V6 takes a little bit of time for the revs to build, and the transmission could shift a little bit faster. But I mean, if you guys go for a front drive model, you're going to shave about a half a second off that. I mean, it's an average time for the class. This is quicker than a Honda Pilot, for example, a Nissan Pathfinder. This is quicker. But if you guys go for like an Explorer Sport, if you're looking at an MDX, those vehicles will be a little bit quicker than the Mazda CX-9. It's only going to be on hills or when you have a lot of passengers in the car. I was able to put about 5 people in this thing, and it did feel a little bit on the sluggish side, but when you're just by yourself, you can see here going around these curves, I'm impressed at how fun to drive this car is. It's just the transmission really lets you down. The V6 does sound a little grainy when you get up in the high revs, but honestly, it has a nice growl to it, so it kind of fits this car's more sporty persona. I'm really liking the V6 engine in this car. I hope that Mazda continues to offer a V6. Now, coming up to the conclusion of this video, I have to say the CX-9's driving dynamics really impressed me. It drives and feels like a Mazda, which is a good thing. It's the sportiest driving crossover in the segment, which is amazing considering how old it is, that no other competitor has surpassed this car in terms of driving dynamics. Now, however, when you come and look at the technology, this car doesn't offer any driver assistance tech features. It doesn't offer active lane keep assist. It doesn't have forward collision warning, lane departure warning, adaptive cruise control. It does have blind spot monitoring, but the CX-9's always had that since this car came out. It has rear cross traffic alert. If you want a backup camera, you have to go for the touring model at least, where a lot of its competitors are making that rear view camera standard. So in terms of features, the CX-9 is lacking the higher end stuff. I mean, the infotainment display, I'm disgusted with it. It's too small. It doesn't really work very well. The nav system is a little bit childish. The visibility in here, however, is good. So the seats are comfortable. The mirrors are also large. You really honestly don't need the blind spot monitoring because you can see out of this car very easily. And then, of course, after a week's long of testing, fuel economy, that's another concern when you're going to buy a vehicle like this. Now, I've averaged actually about 12 miles to the gallon, so the CX-9's fuel economy is rather lackluster. I mean, of course, I'm driving mostly in the city. When I got it up on the highway, I was struggling to get it past 20, so I was very disappointed in that, especially when you can go buy like an MDX, for example, and it offers 28 miles to the gallon compared to this car, which is barely eclipsing 22. Now, I mean, overall, if Mazda can address the fuel economy, they can address the technology. I mean, this car just really needs a redesign. I think this car is definitely a winner for Mazda in terms of a vehicle that they need. Actually, I kind of think Mazda in their SUV lineup, they really need to reintroduce a CX-7, which would be like a Murano, a Crosstour, or a Venza competitor. There's kind of a gap now with the CX-3, the CX-5, and then the CX-9. Not everybody wants something this large. So I will be curious to see the next generation CX-9. Mazda will be redesigning this car in the next couple of years. I'd say within 2 years it should come to market. But if you guys are looking for an SUV like this, the CX-9 is definitely worth to be put on your list, especially if you're on a budget. Now, I call this car a budget MDX in the beginning of the video. It definitely falls into that in terms of the driving dynamics. My particular tester, this Grand Touring tester, stickers for just under $40,000, about $39,900, which makes it about $5,000 to $10,000 cheaper than its competitors. This is cheaper even than a Honda Pilot Touring, which is about $42,000 fully loaded. Not much cheaper, of course. If you guys go for the rear seat entertainment system that my tester is missing, this will push the price just over $40,000. But I mean, the car starts at about $29,900, which is roughly in line with its competitors. The CX-9 does have some strengths of its own. Just know that you will be buying a vehicle that's a little bit down on fuel economy and technology versus its competitors. But if the sportiest driving dynamics are important to you, sleek styling, a lower price with good features, that's important to you, the CX-9 is certainly worth a look. Anyways, hope you guys have enjoyed my overview of the 2015 Mazda CX-9. If you guys are interested in seeing what the latest vehicles I've got to test for you, make sure you check out my Instagram, like us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I'll catch you all in the next review.